Hello there once again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music, and thank you for watching this video. And if you like the sort of videos that I make on YouTube, which are broadly about music, electronics, musical gear, guitars, amps, pedals, hi-fi equipment, old computers, retro tech, and other stuff to do with music really, and occasionally the odd song, then please think about hitting the subscribe button. It's completely free, and if you hit the little bell icon as well, then you'll be notified next time there's a new video like this one. Now, tonight I've just got back from the cinema, and I must admit I have not been to the cinema for a very long time, and it's a nice little 2.5 mile walk each way, which isn't too bad because it actually hasn't rained that much today. Not like it has been anyway. And I went to see Welcome to the Darkness. Now, I didn't know anything about this film even coming out until about last week when I saw a social media posting, I think from Justin, but not 100% sure. And so I bought a ticket and I went to see it. And overall, I thought it was a rather well-made film. It's been filmed over a period of time, and it certainly started quite a while ago. I think they started filming it when the band kind of got back together and started doing stuff again, and they dipped into it a little bit after the comeback, because I think they'd made one album with Ed Graham, and then he left. He was the drummer, and they got a new drummer, and that was Emily Dolan Davis. Now I'm going to just jump in to start with here about The Darkness, because this is a band who I took an interest in fairly early on. I first became aware of them when they were on TV because they just opened, I think, the Friday of Glastonbury in 2003. So they were pretty unknown band at that point. And their album hadn't come out either at that time. But I remember seeing quite a good little interview that they did, I think with somebody like Joe Wiley backstage at Glastonbury. And then a few months later, I met them for the first time. Now, this was at a festival in Guildford called Guildfest. And I was there helping out Arthur Brown, and the first people I saw before I even got into the site was The Darkness, and that's because the band were walking around the car park putting flyers for their album onto the windscreens of the parked cars. And I knew straight away, I thought, these boys are grafters, because so many bands just would not do that. They wouldn't go around putting flyers on. They wouldn't do the donkey work, but you know, they could have spent 2 hours sat in the dressing room doing bugger all, or they could have been promoting their album. And I dare say that helped them get sales. And they were also a pretty savvy bunch, particularly Justin, because when they made that first album, Justin was already a professional musician, and he was doing sessions, he was doing jingles and stuff. He sometimes talks about this stuff on his really good YouTube channel, actually, Justin Hawkins Rides Again. But they paid for the album to be made themselves. And so what that means is, if you sign to a record company, you get a record deal, you get an advance, load of money, and then you have to go and make an album. And if the album sells, you then pay that money back. And if it sells really well, then you get some money on top. What they did was they licensed their album. So they paid for it up front, licensed it out to, I think it was Atlantic. And so the money just starts coming in, because that's what happens when you do a licensing deal. And that's a very canny piece of work. And it's almost like they saw the future coming, maybe, because file sharing and the idea that music should be free was starting to really take a hold at that point. And certainly within a couple of years, you know, file sharing became the norm. And then, of course, that led on to streaming and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I met them backstage at that festival, and I spoke to Frankie first, because we were both wearing bandanas, which I thought was quite cool, and I did get a photo with him. And then I met the guys, and they all seemed really nice, decent chaps. And as time went on, they got to know Arthur a bit better, and I think Arthur appeared in one of their videos as well, because my pal Julian, Arthur's son, gave me a couple of photographs that I got knocking around somewhere of the set of the film that they made for the video. I think it's like Arthur was like a priest in it, or a vicar, and he marries Justin to himself. It's a bit of a wacky film anyway. Anyhow, the band obviously became massive, then they split up, and then Justin started a band called Hot Leg, and I met him again when they played in Exeter. They played at the Cavern. I think it was 2008. It may have been 2007, I'm not sure. It wasn't long after I started taking gig photos anyway, and had a chat with him afterwards, and he was perfectly affluent, amicable rather, chap. Obviously, he probably was quite affluent as well, but never ask anyone about their finances. And yeah, and it was a really good gig. And then a few years later, I was making a music documentary myself about a band called Skin, and they were reformed, and they reformed to play the Download Festival. So in a way, it was a very similar story to this film, because this Darkness film is about the band wanting to get back to playing arenas. That was like their goal. They wanted to go back up again. And when I was at Download, and this was in 2009, Dan and Ed had a band called Stone Gods with a guy called Richie Edwards. Now, Richie Edwards was in a band earlier on with Mark Morris from Balaam and the Angel, who, if you know me, would know I've had for quite a long time, a semi-professional involvement in. I did all their online stuff, a lot of their admin. I helped them book gigs in the last sort of 20, 25 years, but I don't really do any of that anymore because they've got somebody else doing that now. Chap who owns a record shop. Anyway, so I met them again then and had a quick chat with Richie and Dan and people, and again, really nice people. You know, could not fault them as, you know, totally genuine people, love playing music, love being in a band. Anyhow, this film picks up on when they went to Ireland to do some warm-up gigs. Now, this was just before the album was coming out that Emily played on. Now, I do think, I'm going to start with the negative of the film first, which is Emily definitely gets shortchanged in this film, because if you watch the film, you would think she flew in, played these gigs and then left. At no point was there any mention of the fact that she'd made a really great album with them. One of the singles off the album was a track called Open Fire, which I regard as the best song The Darkness ever did. It's an absolute cracking song, but it's one of the songs I don't think they actually play it live that often, and you know, it's really weird because I don't know why, because it's, you know, it's like the Cult song The Cult wish they'd written almost. It's kind of in that vein, and it, you know, it doesn't sound like, you know, like a Queen pastiche, like a song like One Way Ticket to Hell and Back, or whatever it was called, the song that they did with Queen's producer back in the day, which was not the finest moment, although, you know, it was a massive selling record, and, you know, you can't argue with sales, especially these days. Anyway, so yeah, so I think Emily got a bit shortchanged there, because, you know, she was in the band for a while, she made a cracking album, and she is a really brilliant drummer, and there is some live footage in the film, not very long. In fact, there's not that many, there's no like long tracks in it, it's all clips, and I think it's because they assume the audience knows the songs, and that's fair enough. It's a bit like Peter Jackson's Get Back film, really, in the fact that apart from a few moments, there's no full-length songs in the whole documentary. You don't need it. You know the songs, and if you're a Darkness fan, you'll know the songs. But so there's this clip in this club in Ireland where they're playing, and you know, they come out on stage, and Emily's absolutely bang on it. You know, she plays brilliantly on it, and you know, I'm really lucky that I've made 3 songs with her playing drums on now. 2 of them came out as a vinyl 10-inch record, and there's another song that we actually recorded last year, but it's not ready for release yet because I've got a special guest singer that's going to appear on it, but we haven't yet been able to coordinate a time and space to record the vocals. But yeah, anyway, so the story sort of carries on from there. Rufus Taylor joins the band. Now, Rufus Taylor is the son of Roger Taylor from Queen, and he joins the band, and then they go off and do their thing. Now, there's moments in the film where, you know, they are quite candid, and you never quite know what the narrative is of the film. Is it completely honest, or have they all got their guard up? And do get a sense that there are some very honest moments in the film. There's particularly when Dan's talking about his health, when Justin's talking about his health and things that happened. Frankie's kind of, larking about quite a lot in the film, but although I think all of them, they don't want to give away too much about themselves. And I suppose in a way that's quite, that's the mystique of being a musician, isn't it? We live in this age now of social media where if you're a musician, certain percentage of the audience almost feel it's a right that if they send you a message on social media that you reply straight away. And there are people like this. I mean, I admin several bands' Facebook pages as a sort of helping them out kind of thing. And, I don't generally read many messages because that's not the kind of work that I do, but you do get the odd message, and it is very much like, oh, I've seen you once, but you didn't sign something. Will you sign me this and post it to me? Here's my address. You do get stuff like that. You kind of think, no. So I think, if you're going to tell your story, and you have the right to, because it's about you, you just tell what you want to tell. And I think that's kind of what they did. And I think they told enough that for a film that runs for 2 hours, well, I say it runs for 2 hours, the start time was 7:30 in the cinema, but I don't really think it started much before 8 o'clock, because you know what cinemas are like, they put tons and tons of adverts in. But anyway, so they sort of go through the trials and tribulations of being in a band, and the band get in, they make a record, they start doing press. And slowly but surely things move along. Now, I think this film was probably going to get released before COVID. And I say that because the main chunk of the film ends with a gig at Hammersmith Apollo or Hammersmith Odeon. And I think that was in 2018. I'm not 100% sure. I think that was in 2018. So if they'd spent like a year editing it, fiddling around, sorting out rights, whatever, then they would have probably got it ready for a 2020 release. COVID hit in 2020, so they pulled it back. So interestingly, because the whole point of the film was they want to end up playing arenas, right at the very end, after the credits, it's 2023, The Darkness are back in arenas, and they do Wembley Arena. And so, it's a happy ending. It's a film with a happy ending, and I think any film with a happy ending is good. I think the cinematography in it was very good. I think it was all very well shot. You do get a lot of documentary films that are made where, there's lots of wobbly camera shots. It's all a bit Blair Witch Project, But this wasn't. This was nicely shot. And it was done over a fair period of time. I think it must be about 5 years or so was the kind of time scale of what the bulk of the film was being done. So it's a shame that that they kind of glossed over the first bit of the reunion when they made that record before Ed left. And but then again, it's kind of how we are now rather than every bit, every little detail. And I suppose you can just sit on the internet if you want to find out all the finer points of it. But as I say, as a general film, it's a good film. It was well directed. They all come across as really likable fellas, which they are. And there's another great moment in there where Justin's doing his best man speech at his brother's wedding, and obviously it all looks a bit awkward to start with, and then it just becomes completely hilarious. And that's it. That's the thing I think with siblings. I think there is a bond there, and I think siblings in bands, more often than not, there is some kind of chemistry there that you don't get in normal bands. I've seen it with Balan Boys because they're three brothers. There's a duo called Wildwood Kin here. They're fabulous, although they've just changed their band name. I can't remember what it is now. And and obviously, some of the sort of family bands and stuff, they do produce great music. And with The Darkness, you know, they are a great British band, and this film's got lots of nice little clips in it. One of the first voices you hear in the film actually is Tommy Vance, and it's always great to hear a clip of Tommy Vance because I think in a way he's been forgotten about. I think by a lot of people, you know, because he died, what, 15 years ago, something like that. And I think he's kind of been forgotten about in the history of rock music. And yet I can still consider him one of the most important people in British rock music, because his Friday Rock Show was just like nothing else. And I know there's radio stations that kind of mimic his show. I mean, Planet Rock's probably the biggest, followed by like Total Rock, which he started after he left Virgin Radio, I think it was. Anyway, as a film, I would give the film a good 8 out of 10. As I said, I think they could have been said a little bit more about what Emily did in the band. It would have been nice maybe to have a few longer music clips in it. But you know, there's plenty to watch, and it's definitely worth a watch. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Justin. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Frankie. Thank you, Rufus. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ed, and everyone else that's been in that band. And thank you for watching this video. And I'll catch you on the next one.